For years, people asked the same question over dinner tables, in comment sections, and in quiet conversations among fans. Lord forbid something happened to both of them, but what if something happened to just one? It was supposed to be a hypothetical, a harmless reflection, but in the Burruss-Tucker home, that question revealed a divide that had been widening long before the public ever sensed something was wrong. Because what happens when one parent looks at the other and sees partnership, while the other looks back and sees pressure? What happens when the world sees a power couple, but the children inside the home see two philosophies colliding every single day? That question, subtle, almost innocent, became the doorway into a truth the public was never supposed to hear. And tonight, that truth is no longer whispered, protected, or softened. Tonight, the silence is over. For more than a decade, fans believed a simple, polished narrative. Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker, two successful individuals with thriving careers, were simply growing apart. A clean separation, a mature decision, a peaceful ending to a long-running love story. But according to those closest to the situation, and according to the person who felt the consequences most directly, this version of events was never real. What the public saw as stability, those inside the home experienced as structure. What looked like unity was organization, and what looked like a powerhouse marriage was, according to Riley Burruss, a carefully managed image masking a quiet war. A war not of shouting matches or public meltdowns, but of coldness, control, and subtle emotional dividing lines drawn between the very people who were supposed to feel safest. Riley didn't speak like a teenager seeking attention or a child trying to defend a parent. She didn't lash out or cry or sensationalize the story. She spoke like someone who had carried a truth too heavy for too long, and when she finally let it go, she didn't drop a bomb. She opened a vault filled with years of quiet moments the cameras never showed, years of shifts in tone that never made headlines, and years of family fractures that were never framed for entertainment. According to Riley, the heart of the divorce wasn't money, fame, or the usual reasons fans attach to celebrity breakups. It wasn't about infidelity or ego or career pressure. It was about control. Subtle, calculated control that shaped the home more than affection ever did. Riley describes a household where discipline felt less like guidance and more like pressure, where lessons weren't shared with warmth but delivered with detachment. She suggests that Todd's emotional absence wasn't an accident or a side effect of a busy schedule. It was strategic, measured, and rationed in a way that made affection feel conditional, as if support had to be earned, not given. Inside this home, Riley claims everything was interpreted through a lens of evaluation. Every disagreement became a lesson. Every emotional reaction was labeled attitude or drama. Every boundary she set was treated as entitlement. And over time, those labels didn't just define how she was treated, they defined who she was allowed to be. She wasn't nurtured. She was categorized, spoiled, soft, dependent. Words that became echoes, whispers that followed her into rooms she didn't enter, decisions she wasn't part of, and conversations she wasn't invited into. And while Riley was being labeled, she says Kayla was being pressured. Kayla was taught rules, discipline, and independence through survival. Riley was taught to withstand walls. Two young women living in the same house, but under entirely different standards. What outsiders interpreted as sibling rivalry was, according to Riley, survival. Two young women quietly adapting to the family structures placed around them, structures that weren't based on fairness, but on positioning. For years, tension built quietly, unnoticed by the public eye. But Riley says one moment detonated everything that had been buried beneath the surface: the Porsche. A gift that appeared lavish, celebratory, and filled with maternal pride. Social media applauded it. Fans saw generosity, love, and success. But inside the home, Riley claims the reaction was something else entirely: A courtroom, not with judges and lawyers, but with accusations, tone shifts, and uncomfortable silence. According to her, that night did not feel like a celebration. It felt like a verdict, a moment where worth was no longer emotional, but measurable. She claims the sentence that cut deepest wasn't shouted, it was spoken coldly. "This is why your daughter is impossible." That line didn't strike her like anger, it settled like truth. A truth she says shaped how she saw her place in the household from that point forward. And when Kayla allegedly posted online, "Stepkids never become real family," something inside Riley didn't just hurt, it broke. The divide between daughters was no longer a misunderstanding, it was structural, reinforced, cemented, and irreversible.
Riley says something unusual happened in the months leading to the separation. The home didn't erupt, it drained. Todd didn't explode, argue, demand, or declare. He faded. His presence became fragmented, split between New York and Atlanta. Calls delayed, texts shortened, excuses grew longer. Riley claims that by mid-2025, Todd wasn't living in the home full-time. He was managing 2 lives, 2 cities, 2 narratives. The distance wasn't emotional alone, it was geographic. Then something happened that the internet noticed immediately. Kandi quietly removed Todd's surname from her online presence. No statement, no explanation, no public meltdown, just removal. Those who knew her say this wasn't rebranding, it was preparation, a soft step before the hard one. Of everything Riley revealed, one moment stunned her more than any other. When the breakup became real, when the separation became undeniable, there wasn't sorrow, there wasn't confusion, there wasn't grief. There was celebration. According to Riley, Kayla marked the separation publicly, with videos, smiles, and a message meant for private eyes, but seen by the wrong ones. Finally, he's free. And to Riley, this wasn't joy for a parent's peace. It was confirmation, proof that what she suspected for years had been true. This wasn't a breakup, it was positioning, a strategic shift in influence disguised as relief. Riley explains that the difference between her mother and Todd wasn't small, it was philosophical. Todd thought like a businessman, Kandi thought like a mother. Todd measured outcomes, Kandi measured impact. One parent believed children should learn survival first. The other believed children should learn comfort before the world demanded otherwise. These weren't disagreements, they were competing blueprints for a family. And according to Riley, their house was never able to decide which blueprint to follow. She describes moments where empathy was misplaced, where decisions were debated endlessly but feelings were dismissed too quickly. Kayla became guarded, Riley became isolated, and instead of uniting, the daughters were quietly set against one another, not through direct confrontation, but through how affection, expectations, and decisions were distributed. Over time, choices weren't about right or wrong, they were about sides. And once sides exist, families stop being families. They become battlegrounds with no visible weapons, only silent casualties. As the marriage weakened, Riley alleges the businesses attached to the family began showing signs of strain, not collapse, strain. Old Lady Gang, Blaze Steak, Tucker Productions, trucking ventures, projects slowed, energy drained, conversations that once felt effortless became cautious. According to Riley, these shifts weren't random, they were reflections of a family machine operating without unity. She also suggested the prenup revealed intentions that were never spoken aloud. Fans began asking a dangerous question. Was this marriage built on partnership or on a contract with an expiration date? When the divorce became public, silence took over. Phones stopped ringing, texts became curt. People who once spent hours around the couple now kept their distance. Riley says she realized then that many around the family weren't reacting emotionally, they were reacting strategically. This wasn't the collapse of a marriage, it was the end of a transaction. Relationships around the couple weren't shaped by loyalty, but by access. And when access changed, so did alliances.
Support became selective, information became power, and emotions, they became secondary. As fans tracked the timeline, patterns emerged. Todd appeared less in familiar places, business deals changed tone, people who once stood proudly beside him were suddenly quiet. This didn't look like escape, it looked like exile, and exile has intention behind it. Riley never pointed fingers, she never named villains, she never accused outright, but she said enough for the internet to fill in the blanks. And the blanks were heavy. She simply said, "Watch who stays quiet. They're the ones with the most to lose." That line shifted the entire narrative. During one of her most revealing moments, Riley said something almost whispered. "One day, I'll tell the part I'm not ready to say yet." That line didn't trend. It unsettled. It suggested the story wasn't finished. It was paused. When someone avoids a truth, it's rarely because it's small. It's because it has consequences. And from that point on, every silence felt louder. Riley no longer tried to correct the public. She stopped defending, explaining, convincing. Her voice changed from emotional to documented. She wasn't expressing pain. She was recording history. And recordings aren't made for comfort. They're made for clarity. However, the alleged tension, differences, and emotional distance that fans believe exist between the two daughters, Riley Burruss and Kayla Tucker. The number of people who claim they've noticed differences in how Riley and Kayla were raised is staggering. And if you spend even 10 minutes scrolling through comments about this family, you'll see people describing their upbringings as night and day. According to online commentary, again, commentary, not fact, Riley grew up with a certain level of comfort, guidance, financial stability, and emotional nurturing that Kayla, allegedly, did not experience in the same way. People online say Riley was surrounded by opportunity, support networks, and long-term planning from the moment she could walk, while Kayla was allegedly encouraged to take on a more independent, figure-it-out-yourself lifestyle, especially once she reached her later teens. And while fans disagree on whether this was intentional, accidental, or simply a byproduct of blending two separate family histories, they very consistently highlight the contrast as one of the major sources of speculation about the household dynamic. Many commenters who have followed this family for years allege that Riley appeared to receive more traditional parental setup, things like academic prep, tutors, emotional check-ins, college-focused support, and structured stepping stones toward her future, while Kayla, according to online narratives, was pushed more toward self-reliance, hustle, and personal growth through hardship. Some viewers frame this as cultural or generational differences, while others allege it might reflect the parents' own backgrounds and beliefs about independence. People argue endlessly about this. Some say Riley had it easier, some say Kayla is stronger because she was forced to learn real-world skills earlier, some say both daughters struggled, just in very different ways. But regardless of which side fans take, the overwhelming pattern in the allegations is that the girls grew up experiencing two very separate versions of the same home, and that alleged difference is what fuels almost every other theory that exists in these conversations. And that brings us to Todd Tucker, because whether fair or not, the internet has a lot to say about his alleged parenting style, and the opinions are divided in a way that keeps the conversation going non-stop. According to some viewers, Todd was allegedly stricter, more traditional, and possibly more emotionally distant, especially in ways that fans believe clashed with the environment Riley was used to. Meanwhile, others allege Todd may have been harder on Riley specifically because she wasn't his biological child, a claim that many other commenters reject as unfair or unfounded. Some fans say Todd simply wanted Riley to understand the value of work ethic, discipline, and self-sufficiency, and that his intentions were good even if his methods didn't land the way he wanted. But on the flip side, other viewers allege that Todd may have been more lenient or understanding with Kayla because they shared similar experiences growing up without certain resources. None of this is confirmed, none of it is proven, but these theories keep resurfacing in comment sections, creating this ongoing narrative about Todd being a central figure in the emotional imbalance people perceive in the family.
At the same time, people speculate heavily about Kandi's role, and the commentary here gets just as deep, if not deeper. A lot of fans believe Kandi is an exceptionally loving and protective mother, especially when it comes to Riley, who has been by her side since long before her marriage. And because of that, some viewers allege that Kandi may not have realized how some of her decisions impacted Kayla emotionally. People speculate that Kandi poured so much effort into making sure Riley's path was smooth, secure, and full of opportunity that she may have unintentionally created gaps for Kayla. Again, not on purpose, not maliciously, but simply as a byproduct of how their lives were structured. Other viewers say Kandi was balancing too many responsibilities at once: motherhood, marriage, businesses, television, music, and brand building. And in doing so, she may not have been fully aware of how differently the girls were experiencing her presence. But on the opposite side of the debate, there are fans who defend Kandi fiercely, claiming she has always tried her best to support both girls equally, and that the differences people perceive are exaggerated or completely misinterpreted. And that's the thing. Nobody actually knows the truth, but because the family is public and people feel connected to them, the audience fills in the blanks based on what they feel, not what they know.
This leads us directly into another major point of controversy that the internet never seems to stop discussing: the girls' transition into adulthood. Online commentators often claim that Riley was positioned for a smoother transition because she had more structured support, long-term financial planning, and a clear roadmap laid out for her future. Meanwhile, Kayla's path, according to fan theories, seemed much more unpredictable, with people alleging she was encouraged to rely on her own efforts, experiences, and personal resilience. Some see this alleged difference as unfair. Others see it as a life lesson. And others believe the audience is way too invested in making assumptions without understanding what was happening behind the scenes. But regardless of which angle people take, this two separate paths narrative is one of the strongest and most consistent allegations that keeps circulating online. Now let's talk about the daughters individually, because the way people describe them online is a whole other conversation. Riley is often portrayed by fans as sensitive, ambitious, outspoken, and very protective of her mother. Some commenters claim Riley might hold on to emotions longer or internalize certain experiences more deeply, which they believe may have shaped her reactions to Todd's alleged strictness or high expectations. Others say Riley simply grew up in a world where she had more eyes on her, more pressure, more academic demands, and more responsibility tied to her mother's public image. Meanwhile, Kayla is frequently described by fans as quiet, observant, grounded, and deeply independent. People speculate that Kayla may have felt overshadowed or misunderstood at times, especially when placed in the orbit of a well-known family where expectations and roles were already established. But again, these are all fan interpretations, not confirmed facts. People see a few clips or pictures, add their own experiences into the mix, and suddenly the internet has created entire emotional profiles for these young women. One of the biggest themes in all of this is favoritism. And this is where online conversations get the most heated. Fans argue passionately about whether favoritism existed, who supposedly received more attention, and whether any of it was deliberate or simply a misunderstanding. Some believe Riley was naturally closer to Kandi because they had years of bonding before Todd entered the picture, while Kayla may have struggled to integrate into a family that already had strong roots. Others argue that Todd connected more deeply with Kayla because he understood her background, and that this created tension between him and Riley. Some say the favoritism was emotional, others argue it was financial, and some say the audience is projecting their own childhood traumas onto the family. And honestly, that last part might be the most true out of all of it. Because when thousands of people insist they see favoritism, what they often mean is that they've lived through it themselves, and they're watching this family through the lens of their own pain. Finally, we have to talk about the role of social media itself, because the internet is not just observing this situation, it's shaping it. Every interview, every look, every comment becomes a viral talking point. People clip 5 seconds of footage and build entire theories around it. Others take one sentence and turn it into a psychological evaluation. And because fans feel emotionally connected to this family, especially after watching them on television for years, they start to believe they know more than they truly do. The commentary becomes louder than the reality. The allegations become their own storyline, and the narrative becomes something the public feels entitled to debate. The truth gets buried under interpretations, and even though none of these discussions have been verified, they become embedded in online culture as if they're part of a larger emotional puzzle people are desperate to solve. In the end, Riley didn't expose a monster. She exposed a mechanism. A mechanism of influence, positioning, selective affection, and quiet control. A structure that didn't need chaos to function, just compliance. She showed that families don't always collapse through betrayal. Sometimes they fracture through silence, through structure, through survival. And when fans stepped back to observe the pattern, they realized the question was never, who caused the divorce? The real question was, who benefited from the way it unfolded? Because when chaos is random, no one wins. But when chaos is architectural, someone always does. If you're still here, you're not here for spectacle. You're here for truth. And truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it dissolves quietly. Sometimes it arranges itself in patterns you don't notice until the story is already over. And sometimes the loudest ending isn't an explosion. It's a disappearance. Riley's story isn't finished. Her silence isn't emptiness. It's preparation. Because the next time she speaks, she won't be clarifying. She'll be confirming. So stay with the story. Watch the patterns. Study the silence. And subscribe. Because when the next line is crossed, you won't hear it. You'll notice it.